What up, everyone? Welcome to Collie Greens and Nerdy Things, your one stop shop for all things nerdy. I am King, and that is my boy JC3, and we're back at it again. This week, we're talking about Daredevil Born Again, which dropped last week. When when this video comes out, it'll be last week. But an amazing two episodes, and the boy Daredevil is back again, hot off those few years that we had him on the Netflix series. Most of the people have returned, so I'm excited to kind of jump into it. So as the kind of show starts, we meet up with Matt and Karen and Foggy coming out of what I assume is their job, the office, if you will, going to a retirement party for Detective Cherry. And man, I don't know about you, Jay, but it was good to see the gang back together for a minute.
Oh, absolutely, man. Just the way the show opened with like the view we got of the city in New York, and then we got a view of 51st Street, and we saw Nelson, Murdoch, and Page up there, and then we saw our people come out, man, and like it was it gave you a warm feeling, because it's been so long since we've seen them, and it was a happy moment, for us, and them that were making the show, for sure.
Absolutely, man. So as they kind of come out, they're starting to go to Josie's bar. And to be honest, I didn't recognize this until I kind of did a second go around. But Josie's bar is from the comics, and it's actually like a bad guy hangout in the comics, but in this version, it's a cop bar. And the gang's sitting around. Paige is kind of flirting with Matt, which I kind of like to see them kind of have that relationship thing. Since season three, they had kind of a little relationship, and Foggy's at the bar spitting game, and they're kind of proud of him, which is really nice. It was nice to see them kind of happy for their boy to be talking to a girl that uh, the way they're looking at him was out of his realm, right?
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. They were looking at him like he was completely out of his league. You know what I mean? But hey, our boy showed up fresh. Like after years of seeing him, had a clean cut and everything. So
the boy was looking good, man. The boy was looking good. And then it kind of jumps back to Matt, and Matt's talking, but they do this cool thing in this new series where they kind of use visual and sound effects to show when Matt is like looking or hearing stuff that is through a whole crowd of talking, and what he's zeroing in on is that Foggy is having a conversation with a friend or informant of theirs, and it's not seeming so good, and you can kind of tell that Matt is noticing that. And in that moment, we kind of get a side by side, and then we start to see Bullseye, and the guy's on the phone, kind of saying like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this, but and then he hangs up, and you see Bullseye with a gun trained on the bar. And I mean, boy, did all this happen quick, man. Happened so quick and so out of nowhere. Bullseye sends a shot off, and Foggy gets hit. And I mean, this is a cop bar, so cops are jumping into action. Everyone's trying to figure things out. It was a crazy scene.
it was nuts. But like just like first off, just seeing Matt in the actual Daredevil suit again. With the added benefits of it being on Disney Plus now. He's more acrobatic. That that was a sight in itself. And like when we saw him, running across the rooftops, to me, I kind of got like Crow vibes from like 1994 with Brandon Lee running on top of the rooftops and jumping. So that was a little bit of nostalgia for me, but like that, it was crazy seeing that. But then at the time that Matt realized that it was a trap, and he tried to rush back as soon as he can, but before he can get back, it was too late, and Foggy already got shot. It was soul crushing, my guy.
I agree, man. We all love Foggy, you know what I mean? And to see him, I mean, within the first 10 minutes of the episode, shot and down. And you're right, Matt was kind of realizing that this was all set up and it was too late and he couldn't get back quick enough. And there was something I noticed that I wrote down in my notes, excuse me, that I didn't notice the first time around was on the news, on the TVs in the bar, they were showing the white tiger breaking up a robbery in the bodega. So it was kind
Yeah,
of a little like foresight that I don't know if I really keyed on in the beginning. But man, that fight scene in the bar was something else. I mean, once Daredevil shows up, he's throwing Bullseye through the glass. Cops are grabbing their guns. They're trying to get people out of the bar, and Bullseye is coming through wrecking shop. I mean, the boy don't miss a beat.
at all, at all. He's not only hitting everything he's throwing at Matt, at Daredevil. That he's going off on civilians. He's throwing, like pool balls at people's heads, and hitting and striking, like just stabbing random men, punching women. It's like that. He was a straight psycho, bro.
He was ruthless, man. He was ruthless in the fact that you're right. He didn't care about any of the civilians or people in there. It wasn't like it was all targeted. He was just like, "You're in my way, dead. You're in my way." You know what I mean? And he just kept going. And him and Matt ended up fighting towards the hallway going up the stairs, which is really cool. Me and you were talking about this off camera, but we in the show we tend to get a bunch of these really cool one shots that are not really a one shot but a one shot sequence, and Matt and Bullseye going through the bar up the stairs, almost to the rooftop was crazy work, man. I mean, they were going back and forth. Bullseye is throwing these knives hard enough to go through Matt's, suit that is almost Kevlar lined, like it shouldn't be going through, but that boy is throwing them knives and he's hurt. He's limping, and Matt is still on the chase. It is crazy.
They're both taking each other to the limit, man. And another thing I also appreciated about just looking at this first episode is yeah, you kind of have to look at it a bit. I kind of paused it a couple times just so I could make sure I could see. But Bullseye's costume even is comic book accurate, with the three rings, like three rings across his neck and everything, like he is Bullseye, like we're not going all the way back to I think it was '03 with the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, like we're going all out here. So I did appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I love that, dude. And one of the cool things that they did was when Bullseye came through the door on the roof and Matt kind of did that superhero pose on the top of the very top of the doorway, was really dope. And then they kind of start to fight it out on the roof. But simultaneously, through this fight, we're getting flashes over to Foggy, who is still out front on the floor, bleeding out, with Karen crying. And they focus that using Matt's ability to hear Foggy's heartbeat. And as the fight is going towards its apex, Foggy's heartbeat is slowing down, slower and slower and slower until it stops. And Matt freaks out. Matt freaks out hearing his friend's death, and Karen is crying, and Matt is insane and throws Bullseye off the roof onto the concrete.
Just drops him.
Just drops him, man. And what I thought was kind of cool was they showed that through Karen, where she was saying like, please God. She was not willing to turn around and see if it was Matt or if it was Bullseye. And by the time she did, she realized it was Bullseye. So she got a relief because she could not take the idea of losing both of her best friends in that moment. And when we get back to the roof, I mean, Matt Murdock's in tears. He's screaming. I mean, he just lost his best friend, and he takes the Daredevil mask off and drops it over the side, and kind of like a show to say, "I'm done with this. I'm over it."
Yeah, like it was very it was sad. It was a sad, crushing moment just because you saw in his face that all his hope was lost essentially, and him taking off the mask and just letting it go, that was it. He's doing that because he personally feels like he no longer deserves to be Daredevil because he crossed that line.
Abs-
And
Absolutely.
since he crossed that line, uh, we can't do anything else with this. We got to just sit back and try to be a lawyer.
Right, and that's one of Matt's things is he doesn't kill. I mean, he has in the past in the comics, but it's a big deal for him to cross that line, and at that moment he gives up the moniker. And you see at that moment, I forgot his name. His name is Detective. I wrote it down. Detective Cherry pops up
Very.
on the roof, and then sees that it's Matt, and then he kind of goes Matt, and then we jump to a jump cut, and it's 1 year later. Matt's in his house. He's cooking dinner, uh, or cooking breakfast. He's listening to music, getting ready for the day. The news is on, and they're talking about a new special election going on. And Matt kind of stops to look at it because this is kind of where Fisk is going to enter the race. And at this point, they do this cool thing with Fisk and Matt where they're both going through the closet and they're doing the same movements. Matt, because he's obviously blind, is using his hands to go across his coats to choose which one he wants. And at the same time, Fisk is doing that. And he passes by the white coat and skips over it and chooses to use the gray coat as he is going for his candidacy for mayor.
Yeah, he's not. In that moment, we realize, oh, Kingpin's not trying to be a crime lord just yet. Instead, he's trying to be something one could argue is worse, and that's a politician.
Yeah,
So that was it was good seeing the parallels between the both of them because essentially, in ways they're the same in the fact that they're both trying to fight their nature.
they're very much so anagrams of each other. They are the yin and the yang, so much alike but so much different. And you're right, they are trying not to go down to their base instincts. So it was kind of interesting. The next scene picks up where Bullseye is in court. He's having his hearing. He survived the fall, and they're going to give him multiple life count sentences. Matt has to get up on the stand and talks about Foggy being killed and it being his best friend and this guy's fault. He comes out of the court and sees Karen for the first time. Of course, being Matt, he can hear her heartbeat first. And then they come up and have a talk. Karen now lives in San Francisco and she's really not ready to come back to what their friendship used to be. Everything's just a little too much for her, and you can kind of tell that that's weighing on her. And then in the adverse, you see Vanessa. First time seeing Vanessa again, and Vanessa's holding court. She's now in charge of Kingpin's whole thing, his whole crime syndicate since he stepped away after being shot in the face. And he shows up and they kind of have this back and forth of, hey, you disappeared, I was there in your bed next to you, and then you woke up one day and you were gone and you weren't there anymore. Very interesting conversation, to see Vanessa seeming to hold the power this time where Fisk usually does.
Right, right. Like we saw that, she holds the power and that she's been keeping things stable ever since he's been out. But at the same time, we also see that, Fisk hasn't lost his touch. Like the man doesn't really even have to do anything for people to know who's in the room, who he is. Like all he had to do was just step in and then everybody else stepped out because if everybody still takes this man seriously. A lot of people still view him as a monster,
Right.
so like it's not just about it's not just about him trying to win over the affections back of his beloved Vanessa. It's also about him trying to change the people's image of him, as we saw through multiple interviews that were being done in the episodes as well.
Yeah, you know, Fisk is now running on this anti-vigilante uh platform for his mayoral run. He's got, people around him, his staffers and people helping him out, a young dude helping him to show him how to get to the younger voters versus the older ones. Quite an interesting dichotomy. But then we get the biggest scene that I think we all wanted to see from the trailers, which was Matt Murdock talking to Wilson Fisk in that diner. And man, were they playing a game of, who's bigger and badder, uh, saber rattling without, being disrespectful or saying it out loud. It was such a good scene.
Oh, you could feel the tension, man. You could feel the tension between both of them, and that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about them bringing back this show is we're not necessarily, at least for right now, we're not necessarily seeing a collision course between Daredevil and the Kingpin. We're seeing a collision course between the civilians, between the humans, Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk, just two men having a conversation in a diner, heat style. You know what I mean? Like with Al Pacino, and
Yep.
Robert De Niro, having that moment, where they just lay it all out. They lay out what they're about, and in a way trying to put each other in check, but not neither one of them is giving an inch on what they stand for, and I love that part of the scene.
Yeah, it was a great scene. Anybody who hasn't seen it definitely should go check out. Even if you just watch that portion, it is such a scene, man. But then you get Matt Murdock walking down the street a little bit later with his new partner, law partner, that is. And I did write down her name. Her name is Kristen Mc Mix something. McStuffins. I don't know. I forgot what her last name is. But
It's not bad, mixed
something
stuff.
like that. He's walking down the street with her, and then all of a sudden you see people just running around the streets, excited, like a presidential election just happened. But of course, it's the mayoral election. People are celebrating Wilson Fisk's win. Uh, they're walking by a bar, and Matt can hear it on the TV inside that Wilson Fisk won. And the girl that he's with, of course, she can't hear it. So I thought that was pretty cool, that they kind of, excuse me, they kind of show that Matt can hear things and sense things that other people don't. And then we end up with a cool little thing at the end of that episode, which was Muse painting on a wall, and it shows Fisk, but two faced, two different faces. And the first time I watched it through, I didn't realize that was Muse until I looked back, and then I saw, oh, that is him painting another mural as that character does. So I thought that was pretty interesting way to end the first episode.
Oh, absolutely. Like getting our first little tease of Muse, which I don't know too much of that villain from the comics, but from what I know, they're very sinister, and I'm looking very forward to seeing that character and what they do with him, and how he will be a standout villain in the series. But just it was just awesome to see Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, at the top of his building, look like with white lighting in a way, looking down at Matt, who's just looking up at him, and with red lighting next to him, like just contrasting each other. Like we know what these guys are really about, and again, they're fighting who they are, and you could just feel that like radiating from both of them, just the urge, to let that inner animal out, but they're not doing it just yet.
Yeah, yeah, man. So I agree totally. So let's go into episode two. Episode two opens up with Wilson Fisk addressing the public. They're showing basically a pre-recorded or live recording tape of him now winning the election and doing a speech after the election, and he's talking about uh, putting vigilantes in check. He makes mention of Daredevil, he makes mention of Spider-Man, and he makes mention of the Punisher, which is cool. It's the first time we've seen all of them even referenced in the same time. So that was really cool to see. And then it's kind of playing in the middle of Times Square on the big screens next to one of the advertisements for uh, the Rogers the musical. So I thought that was pretty cool and nice little Easter egg to add in there.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's one of the benefits of being an MCU fan for this long, because we watched, the Daredevil show, like when it started on Netflix, and we know, like, back with that show and any of the other shows that came after it on Netflix, they really didn't make too much mention of anything going on in the MCU other than the Battle of New York. So hearing Kingpin make direct references into the MCU, it was just awesome to hear. It also made me hope and wish that one day we'll get Spider-Man and Wilson Fisk Kingpin, like, live action on the screen, too. That would be pretty sick. That'd be cool, I think.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And so we kind of the next scene shows Hector Ayala coming down the subway stairs. He sees two guys jumping another dude, and he jumps in to help. Uh, and accidentally tosses one of the cops into the railroad. And of course,
Whoops.
in the in the subway, there's an electrical line that runs the railroads, and he dies. So then Hector is brought in for questioning, and during a scene, we see Matt out there dealing with something else, and of course, using his abilities, he can hear this conversation going sideways, and it seems like the PD there is stacking things up against Hector, and so he goes in there and offers his services as a lawyer to this guy that he just met. Really good moment for for Matt just to show his his human side, and to kind of help out a dude. Unknowingly at the time, this is the White Tiger. Uh, so it's
Right.
interesting, that whole scene.
That whole scene, like, that scene was interesting in the fact that, like, I've never really known that much about White Tiger, but uh, seeing how they set his character up and seeing how he's already struggling with trying to be a vigilante, and now he has a possible murder he has a murder that he's facing now. So seeing Matt take up the mantle to help him out was cool, but also a little ironic seeing Matt step up to help another vigilante, even before he knew it, and then even when he did find out that he was the White Tiger, still being a little bit of a hypocrite, like, try to be like, well, why would you do this? Like, why would you even tell me? It's like, bro, like, you used to do this. Like, calm down a little bit, But yeah, I love the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. They moved to the court hearing for Hector, and I mean, before anybody could even really speak well, uh, the judge dismisses, and is they're going to go straight to uh, another hearing, and another trial. And it seems in that scene what they're trying to display is that the cops and the justice system are stacked up against Hector in this moment. And it could be because Fisk is now in office and they're trying to be tougher on crime. And then after that scene, Matt starts to have a conversation with Hector, and then tells him, because he can tell that he's lying or not, and tells him that he knows that he's the White Tiger, and that they need to talk about this in court before the opposition can bring it up and it be detrimental to his case.
Yeah, I like I really did enjoy the just the back and forth that they were having, at first in their conversation, but at the same time, you saw Hector struggling. You know, like anytime when Matt came in to see him, you saw he was already beat up. You know, like dragged down, and he's asking like, "How you doing?" He's like, "Hey," pretty much. He's like, "Hey, man, you know, it's prison. You know, and you know they think I killed a cop. You know, like so it's not going well for me." But just seeing his inner turmoil that already made you feel something for his character, which I appreciated.
Yeah, man. And, they make mention of him being the white tiger. And he tells him, like, dude, I'm not even using my magical amulet. So he's not even using his powers to help out. It was pretty cool and pretty sad because you can tell that Hector was kind of beat up over the situation and
Yeah,
has been for a very long time. So most of this episode seemingly kind of centered a little more around, Hector and what was going on there, and what was happening with Matt and more of the legal. Of course, he's not back being Daredevil. There was a pretty cool scene in this episode where Fisk was trying to show New Yorkers that he can get stuff done. So he's walking down the street
yeah.
and sees, traffic all clogged up, and he just tells some construction worker, like, go fill the hole. And he's like, dude, we have to have permits and stuff for that. And he's like, nah, I am the permits. You go do it right now. And it kind of just
It's
showed that he's willing to kind of use a little bit of force to get what's necessary done. uh, and before we get too far, I wanted to mention this scene before I forget. There's a time when the PD and all of the law enforcement are upset that Wilson Fisk got in. They still see him as the kingpin and as a threat and as a bad guy and a mob leader. And they're all willing to quit and leave. And they put in their resignation. Oh, Kingpin doesn't accept that, and it was
not
really good to see what he did.
yeah to see like with this to see because what it was their boss. It was like the commissioner
Yes.
that was yeah, that was rattling him a bit. Just he was the main one letting the kingpin know, you know, like pretty much like nobody in the force likes you, nobody trusts you. I definitely don't trust you. Like he even made a mention that the last guy that one of the last people that ran only ran for like less than like a month. And he said he's like, I'm gonna make it my life's mission to make sure you last like less than a month as well, pretty much. So like seeing people try to step up to Wilson Fisk, but then seeing how he just so nonchalantly just shuts them down and makes them realize like, hey, you know, I am mayor. You know, like I've already won. So you know, you want like if you want extra overtime, that's not happening. Oh, you want extra equipment on this? You're not going to get that. You know, like that's
No.
out the window.
And he makes a lightly veiled threat where he says, hey, I like to go get sandwiches at this place, and they're really good sandwiches. And then, it's funny, people think that they're family members. He makes these real veiled things about people's family members. And what he's saying to the man is, I know where your son is at, and he's with his mom, and they own this restaurant where I got my lunch today. And if you don't play ball, strange things happen, and God, what a power play by Fisk, still showing that, yeah, dude, I'm the mayor and I'm on this now, but I am still Kingpin in some way, shape, or form. So good, man. So good. And let's talk
Oh,
about the last scene in the show before we end it off here. We're almost at the time today. But the last scene me and you were talking about off camera, and it was one of the guys, or the guy that White Tiger saved, was now going to be the witness in that trial. And some of the cops, and I'll be crooked cops in this situation, were coming to get rid of the only witness. And Matt figures that out, gets the guy out of there, and Matt stays in the thing. And the two cops just think, hey, he's the lawyer, he's the blind guy. And they beat him up for a little while, and then they put a gun to his head, and one of the guys like, hey, he's a lawyer, dude, we don't have to do this. And Matt's like, don't do it, dude, don't do it. and then proceeds to beat the stuffing out of both of those dudes.
Yeah, we're talking broken bones. We're talking, possibly broken necks. Yeah, Matt let loose on him, and the most gripping part about that scene to me is you could see before anything even starts, he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to give in. Like you said, he's even asking them like, guys, like please, like don't do this. And I mean, to be fair, they were already beating on him. If they had just stopped there, then he wouldn't have done anything at that point because he we know that Matt can take a beating. But just seeing him try to hold that back as much as he could, but as soon as he heard that gun cock, it was a wrap
It was
for
over.
everybody.
It was over,
Yeah.
dude.
Ending in a primal scream too, which I felt
I
when he
felt
did
that.
that.
I felt that. Well, guys,
Yeah.
that was the episode 1 and 2. Most of the stuff we covered. There's a few things we left out. If we left anything out that you want to talk about, go into the comment section and let us know. We're going to be covering this show every week. So our next episode will come out in the next couple days after episode 3. And stay tuned. Please like, comment, and subscribe and tell us what you thought. And for Collie Greens and Nerdy Things, I'm King,
I'm JC3, y'all.
and we out.